Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Port of LA's September media briefing. Every month, we give you a pulse check on the nation's busiest port and the supply chain that keeps America moving. I'm Philip Sanfield, the port's communications director, and today we have lots to unpack. Here to lead us through it all, as always, is Port Executive Director Gene Seroka. Morning, Gene.
Good morning, Philip, and thanks everyone for being here. Today, we'll kick things off with a look at our August data and how it reflects developments in global trade policy. Then, I'm excited to be joined in Studio 522 by Vincent Iacopella. Vince is a customs broker and freight forwarder who's been helping companies navigate trade regulations and shipping challenges for decades. He's got real-world experience on what's happening out there, and I'm looking forward to Vince's take on today's trends and where we might be headed. Finally, we'll make sure to leave plenty of time for both of us to answer your questions.
Great lineup, Gene. Coming off our best month ever in July, how are the latest numbers looking?
Philip, August was another strong month at the Port of Los Angeles. We moved more than 958,000 container units. That's 6% above our 5-year running average and just a touch below the elevated numbers we saw last August. And when you add July into the mix, we moved nearly 2 million container units in just the past 2 months. That's the best 2-month stretch for any port in the Western Hemisphere. All this is a testament to our incredible waterfront workforce and partners. They continue to deliver for consumers, importers, and exporters while keeping operations humming. Let's take a closer look at the numbers. On the import side of our business, volume remained healthy in August, topping 504,000 20-foot equivalent units. Clearly, retailers and manufacturers have continued to bring goods in early, both to get ahead of the holiday demand and as a hedge against any shifts in trade regulation. Turning next to exports, the port moved 127,000 TEUs. That's up 5% from last year. It marks 3 straight months of modest growth on the outbound side of our business. Still, imports outweigh American exports by about 4-to-1, so there's real opportunity and work ahead to close that gap. As for empties, they came in at 326,000 TEUs, 3% above our 5-year August average. That strong peak season activity has helped open space to reload empties for return back to Asia, keeping the equipment cycle moving. All told, the Port of Los Angeles has handled 6.9 million TEUs through August. That's about 5% ahead of last year's pace and 7% above our 5-year average at this point in the year. 2025 has been marked by volatility in trade flows and policy. Yet we've continued to move cargo with fluidity and efficiency. These results underscore the resilience of our port and the confidence that shippers place in Los Angeles.
Gene, thanks for walking us through those numbers. We've got the back half of September, then Q4 ahead. How do you see the rest of the year shaping up?
Well, Philip, that's a long shot and anybody's guess right now, but we've already seen the peak of the peak in my view. I expect container volume to ease through the rest of the year, especially against last year's unusually high comps. September will likely come in around 850,000 TEUs, about 10% softer than a year ago. That's because much of the year-end holiday cargo has already arrived and is working its way through the national supply chain system. On top of that, economic signals like slowing job growth and lingering inflation are making both importers and consumers just a little more cautious. We'll be watching the interest rate announcement coming out of the Fed today at about 11 o'clock Pacific time. Most importers are now paying tariffs ranging anywhere from 15% to almost double what they were paying at the beginning of the year, depending on where products originate and what categories they land in. Large retailers were able to build some inventory level in advance, but once those goods cycle through the inventory system, added costs will probably hit us as well. Smaller and mid-sized companies, meanwhile, didn't have that cushion. Many are dipping into cash reserves just to cover tariffs that they didn't budget or foresee. Even with these challenges, the Port of Los Angeles is well positioned to adapt. We have the capacity, the great labor force, and operational strengths to handle volume shifts quickly. Our strong supply chain relationships also ensure that we'll keep cargo moving efficiently through America's busiest gateway.
Thanks, Gene, for putting all this in context. With that backdrop, would you please introduce our guest?
Oh, with pleasure, Philip. Vince Iacopella is the President of Government Affairs and Trade Relations, also the Executive Vice President of Strategic Growth at Alba Wheels Up, a global brokerage and freight forwarding company. In that role, Vince helps clients navigate some of the toughest U.S. trade rules, guiding them through compliance while adapting to shifting tariffs and regulations. Vince also serves on the United States Commercial Customs Advisory Committee, working with Customs and Border Protection along with Treasury officials on trade modernization and enforcement. With all the changes in trade policy, Vince's unique perspective on how companies are adapting is very timely. And the two of us go way back. It's great to see you here, Vince.
Great, Gene. It's happy to be here. We do go way back. Yep.
Thanks for joining us right here in the studio at the Harbor Administration Building.
In the heart of it all.
It's where it's all happening right here. Main channel is busy again today with all this freight moving, and thanks to you in helping us navigate through these uncertain times.
Happy to be here.
Vince, the customs and freight forwarding process can feel like a mystery to those of us outside of the day-to-day efforts. Take a second and walk us through what happens as you're preparing for goods to arrive at a U.S. port, all the way from planning to entry filing and the tariff payments to release a container and get it into the supply chain.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So I like to say that every 10 years, we get questions about what we do. Usually when a consumer reaches for something on a shelf and it's not there, and then they work backwards and say, how does it get here? How do we break it apart? So customs brokers, we are regulated and licensed by Customs and Border Protection. We have a very unique position in the supply chain in that we are regulated and licensed by Customs and Border Protection, but we're the only member of the supply chain that has a power of attorney on behalf of the importer. And by regulation, we transact customs business on behalf of the importer. That includes taking all of the shipping data, all of the manifest data, all the commercial data, vetting that, classifying the goods, assessing duties, paying those duties in. I'll stop right there 1 second. 140 billion in duties year to date. 95% of that is managed and paid by customs brokers. So we're an essential part of the revenue on the revenue side, but we're also collecting revenue on consumer product safety, on national security, and we gather that data all along the way, aligned with compliance, aligned with the regulation, optimizing the duties, optimizing the supply chain, and that we send that data into what's called the automated customs environment, which is a single window that covers 49 U.S. agencies, not just customs. 8 of them have withhold and release authority. So I just want to stop on the data a second. It's not just about revenue. Obviously, since April, a priority for our government has been revenue, right? But it's consumer product safety. It's targeting for national security. It's making American consumers have safer goods. Once we do all that, the brass ring is that we get a release, and that gets released into the U.S. commerce and goes to market. But none of that goes to market unless all those other things have happened. And when I say file or assess, since 1993 in the MOD Act, that's been a very technology-driven process. So we're ever evolving. And I'll summarize with this at a high level. We connect global trade to the U.S. economy. And without that vital connection and pivotal role, goods don't get into the United States.
Explain the MOD Act.
The MOD Act was in 1993 in the Clinton administration, and that was a move. There was a famous quote that said, "Automate or perish," that a lot of brokers didn't like, but it was good medicine because it started customs and brokers down the road of automation and thinking differently. Go fast forward to 2016, as we migrated into ACE, the automated commercial environment, we took that technology platform and we expanded it to 49 government agencies. So think about it. I mean, you have pharmaceuticals coming in from overseas. You want to know they're safe. You want to make sure that your kids' toys don't have lead paint on the toy. Customs brokers are filing the data to target that for safety. So there's a lot of automation. And obviously, we'll talk. I'm sure we're going to talk more about it, but we've been very busy since April. Very, very busy. It's been complex. But to your point, I think I'd love to talk about strategies on way to get ahead of it and optimization of the duties and supply chain.
And that's where I want to go next. With more than 100 announcements on trade policy and tariffs emanating from Washington since January alone, on everything from food to clothing, back to school products, even auto parts going to Detroit and factories throughout the country.
Right.
What advice are you giving customers today? And I know we both get out there and talk to industry concerns and associations where a lot of us, including myself, lean on you for that good guidance.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I think it does a couple of things. My company's verticals, Alba Wheels Up, our verticals are semiconductors in the Bay Area and Texas, apparel and goods in New York and LA, fresh produce in Florida, and frozen protein in Philly. And some people say, what do all those things have in common? They're huge priorities for the government and Customs and Border Protection. The government cares about them from a compliance standpoint, from a revenue standpoint. So what we advise is importers that are agile and that have diversification of the supply chain. That's a great place to start, because you want to look at if duties are going up in China and lower in Vietnam or lower in India and other places, you want to optimize that. The flip side of that, of total resourcing and getting out of China 100% and going into India or Vietnam, is that look what's happening right now, right? You have folks that left China, went into India, and actually paying a higher duty rate now than before.
50% tariffs on Indian goods.
That's right. And then if you look at the last executive order, they dropped the word transshipment in there. That had a very traditional definition. And we're waiting for the administration to define what the new definition might be. But most likely, it'll mean that if your Vietnamese goods have Chinese inputs, they're going to be treated at a higher rate. So there has to be diversification of the supply chain and get into different sourcing in different countries. But I'm finding that, I'm sure you've seen the same, there's a bit of a reluctance to make an expensive, huge, fundamental change without knowing what the longer strategy is. Mm-hmm. So they want to know what the rate's going to be and which countries. So if I go to Vietnam, I need to know if I can use Chinese inputs. I want to know that before. If I go to India, I want to know what the long-term plan for India is. So I think that in the absence of a longer strategic plan or road of where this is going to go, you're going to have companies staying in China, going into other diversification. Two other things I want to mention about this. One is that you can legally optimize your duty with things like first sale, right? Drawback, which is refunds on duties for certain manufacturing and also for exports, right? Now, not all the tariffs are eligible for drawback, but it's a tool that's been around, and we're seeing a huge surge with foreign trade zones. So folks that are going into foreign trade zones and leveraging that. So there are these legitimate tools that have been around for a while that have a lot more meaning now because we're paying a lot more duty. The last thing I'd like to point out is go back to this idea that the importer, no matter how big or small you are, is going to have to know your chain. So it's not enough to know the seller, just the seller. Like when I started out in '87 in LA, it was like, you got a commercial invoice from Asia, this is the price, this is where it was made. No, if you're expected to know if you have Chinese inputs in Vietnam, a lot of times your primary seller, your first tier, may not even know that, right? It's several tiers down. So can you imagine, similar to the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act, that you sold me something, but knowing you is not enough. I have to go all the way down the chain. So we're advising companies on visibility tools, leveraging technology, in some cases, artificial intelligence, machine learning, to break past that first tier because not only for forced labor issues and ESG issues, but to really know the content of what's in there. And we see lots of enforcement in that area. And my last point, I promise, is that our government right now is very focused on revenue. And the three things that affect revenue are the origin, the value, and the classification. So there are legitimate devices to optimize that, right? But they're going to be enforcing, you're going to have to prove your case. You know, if you're going to show a lower value legitimately, the importer is going to have to prove that to customs. And that's where might be, we want to see which way that's going to go and optimize how you can reduce those costs.
No shortcuts here, and that's why we need experts around
I wouldn't advise it, no.
this situation. And also, it may play to one of our strengths. You know, CTPAT, the Customs Trade Partnership Against Terrorism, that came out of the terrible events of September 11th back in 2001. APL was a charter member when I was with the company, and you were heavily involved. But it's about vetting the supply chain partners. And if you have to go upstream or to deeper levels on parts suppliers.
That's right.
Even the shirt I'm wearing, plackets and buttons come from China. They go to Vietnam to make a shirt and then get shipped. There's a lot of detail here that we've got some framework around, but it's got to really be tested today.
I agree.
Another thing that's captured the nation's attention over the past couple of weeks is this de minimis exemption. Small parcels under $800 in value that were exempt from tariffs or taxes. Now, it's one thing for you and me to be watching a game on Saturday and buying something, your favorite T-shirt of your college team. But it's another for small businesses and medium-sized ones here in LA and across the country that count on that type of a service to stock their shelves and online buying platforms. What are you seeing since this announcement?
So it's a seismic shift. And when I was on the COAC years ago, the trade has been discussing this for 8 or 10 years. There's two sides to it. The high level is you're going, many operators in the space are going from a less complex model to a complex model. So yes, we had an $800 de minimis. If something was under $800, it was duty free. There was less data involved in the transaction. It was built around speed to market, to your point. And as of August 28th, that is gone, right? There's a transitional fee that can be paid for transitional by definition for a while. And we're advising our partners and our customers to migrate to a consumption entry 0-1 environment.
Explain that a little bit.
Yeah, so the consumption entry is the old-fashioned entry that we still do for retailers and importers, where it comes in bulk. It's not necessarily direct to consumer. You pay the duties, like we talked about. The old model had no duty. The de minimis had no duty. You pay the duties. A lot more data, right? A lot more enforcement and compliance, right? So there's a shift from those other actors into this. I'm not saying they're bad actors. There's a shift. There's a lot more data. Think about all the FDA data, all the other agencies, and it's a huge model shift. And I say that because I think it's going to be seismic, as I say, for the following reasons. It takes resources. It's going to take resources for those that were using de minimis to go into a duty-paid environment with more data, gravitating toward a trade-sensitive broker, a broker who is compliant. Compliance is going to be key. There's a lot of revenue involved now where there wasn't before. So what do I see in the market? I see a lot of scrambling. I see folks who were in the de minimis environment migrating over to the duty-paid environment. And our advice there is you may have to find brokers. You should find brokers that are familiar with that model, right? With the duty-paid model, highly compliant. And it's early, but it seems to me at this point that those precisely the folks that maybe got beat up a little bit, right, in this space, are the ones that I see investing in the compliance because they have the resources, right? They have the resources to gather the data, manage the data, find the right partners, pay the duties, because now you have this cost that you have to pay duties. So I think it's going to favor larger marketplaces, I think it's going to favor larger companies that can actually have the capital and resources to make the shift. You make a great point. What happens to the smaller folks there? I will say this. We've said this years ago during the pandemic. I think I was with you when I said it. But e-commerce is how a consumer buys something. It's not how we file something, right? So e-commerce is not going away. People, you and I will still be on our couch watching the game and ordering hats and shirts. Yeah. It's really not going away. What's changing is the model to get it to market is changing, right? So stay tuned, but it's moving. It is moving fast. But that's pretty much what I'm seeing on it.
And can you help companies bundle or consolidate their interests? Think of that small business up on Melrose that's buying plates or coffee cups to sell at their store. Could they rally and work together with other small businesses to go to this entry model you're talking about?
Yeah, there are fulfillment models. I don't want to start naming brands, but there are fulfillment models out there that do exactly that, right? The largest one in the world, right, can do it. I think it's an avenue for smaller folks in consolidation, but even the big guys are wrestling with the consolidation question, right? Because now I still have direct-to-consumer boxes. I still have them labeled, right? I'm putting them together like the old days. I'm putting them together, bringing them over in bulk, right? I'm maybe, as a broker, I'm not filing 180 de minimis. I'm filing 5 customs entries now. Right.
And then you do the hard work of
And you break them apart.
deconsolidation and distribution
Like we
here
used to-
stateside.
like we used to do.
Yeah. That's right. That's right. Yeah. But I know that even just shopping and talking to folks through the LA Area Chamber of Commerce and our mutual friend Maria Salinas, that businesses are hungry for this type of information.
Yes. Look, I think I'm going to bring it full circle back to when you asked me what brokers did, right? So the challenge, who's going to win in this? If you can move to that 0-1 dutiable environment with more data, and you still have speed to market, right? You can still get into the market very quickly, you're going to win. Those are the folks, in my view, that are going to win. If you get stuck because of, you're lacking data, or we see some tension with some of the data required for FDA and some other agencies, and you can't, because let's face it, like the people that are buying this thing on the phone, they don't want to wait 3 weeks for it. They're used to getting it, a couple of days, same day in some cases, right? So I think that's going to be the key as you migrate over to a more complex model that has revenue involved and customs enforcement involved, right? How do you and our company is as others is really focusing on this for the right partners. As a trade sensitive broker, we're selective about who we work with this on, but really keeping that speed to market, keeping that package moving. That's what it's about, right? That's what you do. That's what you all do. All those containers out there, you don't want them sitting there for weeks. You want them moving. I think that's going to be the exciting challenge, but it'll happen. It'll get done.
That's right. And as the saying goes, there's nothing small about small business.
No.
But those proprietors and their partners need really good consultation.
Yes.
And
I don't want to be too negative on them. I'm just saying it's going to be a little more of an uphill climb, but doable.
Right.
But doable with the right
But
investment.
folks need information, guidance,
Absolutely.
and they need to bounce around these ideas.
They have to go to the right partners now.
That's right. That's right. Okay, shifting gears just a little bit. We talk a lot about the trade policy and tariffs, but something that we're about to be faced with next month are the ship fees on China-built and operated vessels. That's going to start on October 14th. What are you seeing from your perch?
Well, one, let me just start by saying that the revised plan is better than what was released by the USTR initially.
500 comment letters from industry, 2 days of public hearings. Great credit to the USTR and staff for listening to business.
So, I mean, the obvious change is it's now per voyage. It's now per voyage instead of per port of call. So smaller ports are not getting hit with these onerous fees. I mean, in a nutshell, for those that may not be familiar with it, it's fees based on vessels that are Chinese owned and operated, which are higher fees, and then fees operated by others that were Chinese built. And the first category is a higher fee, and it kind of layers up from October 14 all the way to 2028, as you phase up. The question they're substantial costs. They are real costs. They might be less this year. I've seen numbers. I don't know if it's worth to say a per container number in this discussion, but I think I've seen sliding scales of 10 to 40% of the ocean freight as you start in this year, 26, 25, you go into 28. It is a cost. It is a cost on top of the tariffs. You talk about I see folks trying to optimize. I see the ocean carriers trying to optimize on this. I see customers coming and say, let's optimize. Let's not use, easier said than done. Let's not use ships not built in China. So I think the jury's still out. As an intermediary and a broker, in my experience, I'm going to punt and say, we're going to really be at the mercy of the carrier optimization. But you would know more about that.
Yeah, well, we're going to watch this very closely because it's new to all of us. But early back of the envelope estimates look something to the effect of $125 per container to maybe over $300 here at the Port of LA. Now, that cost per box may be lower than other entry points simply because of the average volume we have on every ship that comes in. Smaller ships will have a higher cost per box.
That's right.
And even going back to the Trans-Pacific Maritime Conference in March, Soren Toft, the CEO of Mediterranean Shipping, said, you know what, one of the things we have to look at is to see if we can pass this cost on. So on top of tariffs, on top of complexity, uncertainty, now we've got yet another cost associated with bringing goods into the country.
You make a great point because we made this about the tariffs. No matter who along the way in the supply chain pays it, it ends up in the consumer price. So it will be done. And I actually agree with you on the Chinese, maybe on the Chinese owned and operated. We're seeing figures even higher than the 250, 300, but that's the figure I saw for the Chinese built. So yeah, I think it's a substantial cost.
Right. And we're not kind of waffling on this subject. It's a matter of let's see when these ships come in, how many containers are loaded, what the assessment is, and how it works its way all the way down. Then we're going to follow the money.
Right.
And see exactly how these costs are going through the system and what impact it could have on American consumers.
The idea is one carrier announced that they might have been able to take Chinese-built vessels out of rotation, but I'm not sure that's going to be a reality for all.
Right, and according to our own Aveen Sharma, we did a study on this earlier, about 30% of the 2,000 vessel calls annually here at the Port of Los Angeles are with China-built and operated ships.
Oh, can I say one? Yeah. So again, having started out here in LA in '87, this is definitely an eastbound Trans-Pacific. I see eastbound Trans-Pacific, China, Southeast Asia, India to U.S. West Coast, more affected than other regions for sure.
Right.
Great point.
Right. Agreed. We could talk like this
I know.
all morning long.
Yeah.
It's like catching up on shop.
Yeah.
But let's turn it back over to Philip now. I know we've got a bunch of questions from the media who have joined us today. Philip?
That's right, Gene. Thank you. We'll begin with questions submitted in advance and then turn to new ones. So if you do have a new question you haven't submitted, please enter in the Q&A box below and include your name and the outlet that you represent. So let's start with Vanessa Yurkovich from CNN. This question is for you, Gene. You've mentioned earlier that most of the holiday goods have already arrived. With tariff rates apparently mostly set for now, do you expect a one-time price level change? And has that already happened for importers and consumers?
Thanks for joining as always, Vanessa. Good to hear from you. There's real evidence out there that these prices, the price hikes on tariffs, and also changing supply chains add cost as well. You've had a relationship with a manufacturer in China for decades, and now you've got to shift to another origin company. Your merchandisers, the transport folks, they're all shifting as well, and prices change. A tariff in one sector leads to price increases in others. We've talked about this a lot with respect to steel and the tariffs on that product, seemingly to benefit U.S. companies, but their prices have also risen on domestic product as well. So with what we see right now, and I'll use a couple of examples, Mary Barra at General Motors highlighted in the quarterly report that they got hit by nearly $2 billion in tariff impact. Jim Farley over at the Ford Motor Company said in excess of $1 billion for his company. And costs that they have absorbed both internally. Because seemingly these policy statements are coming out every 2 hours, 2 days, 2 weeks, or 2 months. So some folks try to absorb. Others now are looking at plans as to how they can share those costs.
Thank you. This next question is for Vince, and it's from freelance logistics writer Eric Watkins. Vince, some importers are able to mitigate the impact of tariffs through something called duty drawback, which you referred to a few minutes ago. Would you explain what it is, who can use it, and how it can help?
Happy to do it. So as previously, there's a lot of tools out there that have been around for a long time that have really impactful uses now. So duty drawback is the ability to get duty refunds back on goods that are exported, and in some cases, goods that go into manufacturing, right? So at a high level, it's a great way to get the tariffs back on eligible goods. The caveat there is, I won't get into the weeds in this answer, but you do need to consult with your broker, with your attorneys, because not all the tariffs are eligible for drawback. So you need to check that out.
Great, thank you. This next question's from Laura Curtis of Bloomberg. It's actually for Vince and Gene. It's 2 questions. Has the increase in customs activity related to revenue collection impacted operations at the Port of LA and other ports? And are containers detained more during inspections? How does all that work? Vince, why don't we start with you?
Well, Gene will talk about the throughput on the port. Obviously, since April, there's been a huge impact in our operations and our automation in educating our customers on these tariffs as they come out. Things are moving very quickly. They change. We had that discussion about initial tariffs and then additional tariffs on Section 232, the IEEPA tariffs, the reciprocal tariffs, and some of them stack, right? If you saw the tariff tracker, now it's all automated in our company. But initially, the tariff tracker for stacking looked like your chart at waiting for your flight at LAX. It was very, very complex. So it is taxing on everyone. I would just say, in answer to this, that a bit, whatever the policy is, whatever the tariffs are, whatever countries are affected, from the filer and the management of these tariffs, the private sector could use a little more ramp-up time. So from when these are announced to when they go into effect, I think a longer runway would facilitate both importers and brokers in getting this paid in. And it's pushing everybody also into automated solutions that are working as well. So.
Gene, impacts here in LA?
Yeah, I think it's a real interesting subject because I speak a lot with Africa Bell, who is the director of U.S. Customs and Border Protection here in Los Angeles, which is the largest customs district in the nation, including the ports of Long Beach, Los Angeles, LAX, and Long Beach Airport, and other trade gateways throughout the region. And Director Bell tells me that never like this before, the rank and file CBP agents are working around the clock, trying to keep up with the policy changes, making sure that they're up to date on the 12-digit harmonized codes and all the categorization that takes place. So a big thank you to the agents and the leadership of Director Bell for really continuing to work day in and day out to keep this cargo moving. And as evidenced by the Port Optimizer and the Signal, the operational data that we publish every morning, the turn times on trucks are about an hour right now at the Port of Los Angeles and Long Beach for that matter. The dwell time for containers that move in and out by truck, which amounts to about 2/3 of all of our activity, is at or under 3 days, a pre-pandemic best. And the rail traffic, which is so important to all of us getting across the nation, is below 4 days now on dwell times, and the aging containers are down below 1,000. So we're really seeing those key measurements of fluidity thrive right now, and a big part of it is those agents that are really working with industry to make sure the clearance process follows the regulation and the policy, the safety and security requirements of our country, and getting the goods to market. Thank you.
Thank you. Gene, Laura is following up with a question based on the USTR conversation that you and Vince just had. Is the port noticing any changes to vessel schedules over the next few months because of these fees taking effect next month? And will LA end up with more market share because of the changes?
We're not seeing too many changes just yet, and we compared notes earlier with Chelsea Boyd and Damian Young in prepping for this press conference. And although we could see changes come up probably even as we hit the 11th hour on this particular policy change, nothing just yet. But in talking to CEOs and executives across the shipping industry, there will be modifications coming to try to limit exposure, mitigate increased costs, so that end game of passing these costs on to the customer and consumer can be best minimized through creative architectural design on the waterborne deployment. Much more to come on this story. It's not fully written just yet. Thanks for the questions, Laura.
Thank you. We've got a couple more questions here, so if anybody on the call has any more questions, please drop them into the Q&A box now. Vince, this is from Lisa Bartline of Reuters. Is there a link in the recent rise of container shipments to the end of the de minimis exemption in the U.S. that you've been talking about?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there probably will be. And I don't know that we've seen it yet because I'll go back to something I said previously, that these are still speed to market, right? So a lot of these are still coming through air freight and they need to get to the consumer. We do have models that even before the de minimis exemption, the de minimis went away, we still have models that were leveraging ocean freight. But I'm sure that's going to happen because with the duty paid, and you have more time to plan, maybe you can deal with a longer transit time on Trans-Pacific. So I haven't seen it yet, but I'm sure we will.
Yeah, and this was a big topic of discussion. I was up in Boise on Sunday and Monday this week joining the IACI, the Idaho Association of Commerce and Industry, led by my friend Alex LeBeau. We had a meeting over at the J.R. Simplot Annex just off 8th Street in downtown, and a lot of this discussion was, okay, so we see this change in the smaller packages. What is it going to mean for business? And then how is industry going to see these trends move in different ways? Could it be combining the efforts of a number of small companies with the great interest that Vince has shared today and the ability to do even deeper purchase order management, deconsolidation, distribution patterns that will change? So a lot of topical discussion on this subject up in the great western area of the country, as well as right here at the ports. Thanks, Lisa.
Very good. This looks like our last question. It's come in from a couple of reporters. It's on regarding tariffs on steel, aluminum, and copper. For both Vince and Jean, what are logistics providers doing to help customers anticipate and absorb these cost spikes? Vince, let's start with you, please.
I'll this is something, being in the tech, having a tech sector, tech vertical inside of Alba, affects us and our customers very, very much. One, I think we should consider an exemption for steel and aluminum tariffs that go into manufacturers, just as a suggestion economically. Secondly, the steel and aluminum tariffs are really require a lot of work and research because even if a small portion of the article, and Gene, you and I talked about this at UCLA, a very small portion of the article could have steel and aluminum, and if you can't identify the value of that specific amount of steel and aluminum, then you pay that tariff on the whole article. And on a small article, it's painful, but on a large article, it's onerous. So it requires a lot of assistance with brokers and attorneys. And the challenge that I see is that even very large importers with a lot of resources are having trouble going through the supply chain and identifying and breaking out this value. And I'll just tie it to this. It goes back to what we said before. It may not be the seller, right, who has that data. It may be sub-tier, couple of tiers down. It's not impossible, but I think it takes time to retool that supply chain. So yeah, that's what we're seeing. We're seeing that it does take a lot of effort, and there'll be a lot of enforcement on it as well.
Right, and this is going to be another interesting case study. As we've said, tariffs in one segment lead to price increases in others, and with 50% tariffs on steel emanating from places like China, Canada, and other locations, domestic steel producers can raise their prices as well. And that hits home with us specifically as we continue in our efforts to rebuild the communities in Altadena, Pacific Palisades, and Malibu that were devastated by the wildfires earlier this year in January. The cost of rebuilding those communities goes up exponentially with tariffs on softwood lumber from Canada, appliances coming out of maquiladora areas in Mexico, and the metal products of steel, aluminum, copper that have to go into these homes and businesses. I was talking with Lou Horn just yesterday over lunch at CBRE, who's been leading efforts on a volunteer basis to help rebuild in the Palisades and doing everything he can on the procurement side to try to measure these costs downward, even in face of these rising taxes on American imports. So this is a big deal to all of us, and we get the best minds on it, some of the brightest people in industry and in our community, trying to work this down so we can revitalize those communities that are so important to Los Angeles, the region, and our country. Thanks for the question. Appreciate it.
Great. So we do have several questions that have dropped into the Q&A box. We'll try to get to all of these. We'll do this kind of rapid fire here. This looks to be probably for Vince first and maybe Gene. This is from Tom Black at Bloomberg. Regarding de minimis and the end to it, is it having an impact on warehouse space?
Not that I could see at this point, unless what happened, you'll have a situation where someone cannot get goods in and can't move it through, and they'll need some space. I haven't seen it immediately, but it could. It's very volatile and it's new.
Yeah, from that same conversation with Lou Horn yesterday, industrial space across the region, which amounts to more than 2 billion square feet of warehousing, distribution, and storage space, that market remains strong, but not over capacity with respect to the volume of cargo coming in.
And we might be in a different place in LA than others, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You know, where ports around the nation are down now with overall cargo volume, we're up 5-6% compared to last year. So we're kind of looking a little bit different than the rest of the country. But I think we're in pretty good shape. And as Vince alluded to earlier, whether it's bonded warehousing, which is ultimately authorized by the Treasury Department in Washington, or these foreign trade zones that are governed by the U.S. Department of Commerce, they're only a fraction of this massive warehouse space that we have, but yielding some real interest from the shipping community.
So the pressure we see really on bonded facilities and FTZ was really on the tariff issue,
yeah,
right? And more than de minimis at this point, but we'll see.
Right. Close watch on that segment that's so important to our business.
Quick follow from Tom Black here. Freight fraud, how big of a problem is it? Vince?
I don't, the scope of the question, most of the fraud, I hate the word even, but most of the fraud that folks are looking at, I think, are more on the revenue side for tariff and valuation and things of that nature. By freight fraud, I just need a better definition of exactly the risk that they're trying to identify.
Yeah, Tom, if you could come back to us on that through the chat box, please.
Okay. We'll get, Gene, you touched on this. Paul Berger from the Wall Street Journal is asking you if you have any more detail on the what cargo levels would look like for September, October. I know you mentioned about 850 for September. Beyond that, the rest of the quarter?
Yeah, Paul, good to hear from you as always, and thanks for your ongoing reporting. Again, I see a softening in the market just simply because we've brought so much product in on the retail side. But also left to discuss is that we bring in about an equal amount of cargo on parts and components that go into American factories. And after being in Detroit recently and texting with Jim Lemon with Expeditors back in Detroit, you know, the automotive tiered suppliers have a much smaller window. On average, maybe a month to 45 days on their order cycle process compared to the 3 or 4 months on the retail side for finished goods. So a steady but lower stream of parts are going into American factories, including the OEMs in Detroit with the big 3 auto manufacturers, because the risk of impacting that supply chain could be between $2 and $4 million per hour in cost exposure if a car plant has a line shutting down due to a lack of parts. So this is going to be a little bit different look. But I think on the retail side, most of the big folks, whether it be in big box retailer, home improvement, and others have said they tried to get in early. They saw these windows of opportunity with the pause in negotiation with China now 2 times and meetings that were just held in Madrid this week between high-level representatives of China and the United States. So that window of opportunity from late June through July and August seems to be it. And I think as we look back, that'll be our peak season, a little bit earlier than normal for the reasons we've described. I don't see the market cratering. I don't see the volume going over a cliff. But compared to really high comparable statistics last summertime, you'll likely see about a 10% drop in cargo volume compared to where we were at this time last year off of very elevated levels. Thanks, Paul.
Great. It looks like we've got 2 more questions, which we should have time for both of these. This one first for Gene from Stuart Churls of FreightWaves. The trucking industry is suffering through an extended period of low rates and middling demand. How has this affected truckers serving the Port of LA, and what are you seeing on the ground?
Well, it certainly has been a lot of pressure, whether it be from iconic companies like J.B. Hunt in Arkansas to 2 companies that were very close to this port, GSC based up in the Bay Area and TGS in Bakersfield, that had to close shop because of the pressures on the market. Just devastating not only to our supply chain industry, but to the good men and women that worked at those companies. And it's a little bit different because I think we've seen a lot of cargo growth over the last 12 months really be on the rail side of our business, cargo that's discretionary in nature to an extent, but coming through this gateway, because when it's operating like it is right now, it's the best way to and from Asia, bar none. So that's where we've seen the uptick. The cargo, that 2/3 of the business that moves in and out by truck, has been relatively steady. A lot of competition, a lot of price pressure in this area, Vince.
Yeah, Gene alluded to this earlier, serving small and medium-sized enterprise as well as global brands in our company. I think that I agree that the peak was probably in June. I think you guys have the numbers. I read them as you publish them, and we do see volumes decreasing a little bit. There was a lot of front-loading of inventory. I think it begs the question what the volumes will be in Q4. And maybe it was a selective front loading. So I think folks, you alluded to it at the beginning of the talk, that folks that have the resources to buy all that inventory and bring it in front loaded, and maybe smaller companies that couldn't do that will still have inventory moving as we come. So the question though, if all this inventory comes in this year, what does it do to 26 and Q4 if we're bringing it all in now? How much will we have then?
And we saw a prelude to this back in 2018 and 19. Remember?
That's right.
Where we first saw the trade policy changes, the introduction of tariffs, and we saw big run-ups in cargo before tariffs were implemented, then huge drop-offs. Go back.
Well, some of that inventory is still around.
That's right. Keyboards and brake pads and all kinds of products that were brought in. But it was the fourth quarter of 2019, Vince, where before COVID, where we saw the volume here at the Port of Los Angeles drop by 16%, simply because folks really front-loaded on a much more narrow scope of tariffs.
Right.
So we've got to watch this really closely.
Yeah.
Very good. Final question from Sue Young of ABC News. It's for both Vince and Gene. Can you talk about refunds? Are people customers applying for tariff refunds, and is that actually resulting in payouts? Any idea to gauge the amount of refunds, either by the number or dollar amounts, and who may be applying for them? Vince, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I'm not an attorney, but I know the practical side of getting refunds as a broker. So the Court of International Trade had ruled that the economic emergency, IEEPA tariffs, were illegal. The appeals court upheld that. I think it's going to the Supreme Court very soon. And the part that I know more about is if you're allowed refunds, how to get them. So it reminds me of the 2005 refunds from Central America on the free trade agreements. You have to track liquidation dates. The importers need to track the liquidation dates, and some importers are filing protests. I really advise you, if you have a lot of, no matter how much money you have at stake, you might have a lot of refund, consult a really good trade and customs attorney and a broker to help you with this. Some are filing protests. There might be other ways to get refunds on entries that haven't liquidated. So I definitely, they're not refundable until it's ruled that they are refundable, right? But definitely get some help with it, but definitely an opportunity to get back. There is a question from the government side whether all of them are coming back. Not going to get into that, but get some help on that.
Right. This is something we're watching, and it is super complex. Sue, thanks for joining from New York and your ongoing interest in our business. But we'll keep you posted with what we hear, and I know it'll be real topical in the industry in the days and weeks to come based on the Supreme Court's hearing of this issue.
Great. That's all the questions. Tom Black from Bloomberg did not get back, so we'll reach out to him offline regarding his follow-up on fraud. Gene, that is it for the Q&A today. Great questions and responses. The floor is yours to wrap things up.
Vince, thanks for taking time to come in. This is awesome. Always great catching up. Learn something new every day. We sit together on the board of the Anderson Forecast up in Westwood at UCLA, and it's just such a privilege to be associated with you and work together in these challenging times.
Thank you for having me. I really enjoyed it, and thank you again.
Great to see you, Vince. Thanks a bunch. Well, tonight is a really big evening in our industry with the annual Containerization Awards set to be held in Long Beach. And our industry will honor two icons. Peter Tershwell, a longtime journalist with the Journal of Commerce, S&P Global, will be honored with the Connie Award. And the Lifetime Achievement Award tonight will be bestowed on our friend, George Goldman. I know we'll have a lot of people and family and friends in attendance, and it sure will be an epic evening for those two leaders in our industry. Finally, I want to spotlight how the Port of Los Angeles is using technology more than ever before. First, we're proving new levels of efficiency every day with data and analytics. Second, we're protecting our critical systems with world-class cybersecurity. And lastly, we're exploring the possibilities of artificial intelligence to reimagine the port and how we work. Let's start with what's proven. Our Port Optimizer. Launched back in 2017, the Optimizer is a trailblazing digital platform that gives thousands of stakeholders real-time, data-driven insights. And we've kept building on it, adding new tools that help everyone plan better and predict more accurately. Take the Signal, for example, one of the Optimizer's most popular features. Every day, the Signal tracks manifested imports headed to our port and gives us a 3-week plus look ahead at that volume. That's visibility that's unrivaled today. Another powerful tool we've added is the Universal Trucking Appointment or Reservation System. Together with that appointment data module, it streamlines scheduling for the more than 20,000 truckers that have the privilege of serving our port in and out that we count on so much every day. And as a result of this new module for truck reservations, gate usage is up by 20% this year alone, driving greater efficiency across the board. And thanks to an $8 million State of California GoBiz grant, we're expanding the Port Optimizer to include container terminals both here at the Port of Los Angeles and Long Beach this year. A portion of that grant will also fund the Carbon Intensity Gateway, a digital platform that tracks greenhouse gas emissions past and present, and this new tool will make it easier to spot trends and target improvements across a variety of segments in our operations. The GoBiz grant will also support the new CalPort's desktop and mobile applications. Built on the Port Optimizer platform that was co-developed with the Wabtec Corporation, they'll be able to use secure, scalable data and share it across the 5 major container ports here in the Golden State. It's all pretty exciting. In 2014, the Port of Los Angeles joined the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to launch the nation's first Cybersecurity Operations Center. The results speak for themselves. Last year alone, that system here at the Port of LA successfully stopped more than 800 million cyber intrusion attempts. Now, you don't get ribbons for the number of attempts, but it allows us to classify these and dig even deeper. They could include network and system exploitation, to credential harvesting, malware, ransomware, and even various and sophisticated phishing schemes. Then, on the back of the CSOC, we developed back in 2021 the next step to become the first seaport in the world that established a cyber resilience center. This was our first attempt to bring the private sector partners into our cyber threatscape. This was co-developed with the help of IBM and broad industry guidance. The CRC acts as a defense shield for all of our partners in the supply chain. These results have also been impressive. The CRC has detected more than a dozen critical and coordinated threats targeting our private sector partners who were able to take measures that prevented their digital operations from being compromised. And finally, let's take a look at the possibilities, how we're using artificial intelligence and big computing for emerging technologies to rethink how we operate here at the port. We see enormous potential in combining the great institutional knowledge, that human expertise, with modern computing power. We all know that AI can process complex scenarios quickly, but when you pair that with the real-world experience of our great dock workers, folks in the industry like Vincent and many others, to help decision-making get faster, smarter, and more effective. For example, when ships are delayed or schedules change, prescriptive analytics can map out options in minutes that could allow us to engage our rail partners, the trucking industry, and that skilled workforce to react to the situations faster. Then the workers on the ground can combine that data with their great expertise to make the best call for next steps. That's where the magic really happens. People and technology working together to move more cargo than ever. And we're also testing a digital twin technology in a virtual environment that can replicate the physical systems that let us also modernize and model those scenarios before they happen in real life. Right now, we're simulating traffic patterns to plan for the rerouting of vehicles, both commuters as well as industry, during the Vincent Thomas Bridge project, by running countless alternatives with the help of great companies like Esri and the Jet Propulsion Laboratories, a subsidiary of NASA, right here in suburban Pasadena. We can look at alternatives virtually and then share those ideas with industry experts to see how we can continue to keep commerce moving while that all-important bridge project takes place. Our capabilities also go beyond logistics. From a security standpoint, we can now detect deepfake photography, video, and more. These are just a couple of ways that people and technology can come together to keep this Port of Los Angeles running at its best. We've proven what data and analytics can do with tools like the Port Optimizer. We're protecting our critical assets with world-class cybersecurity, and we're exploring concrete ways that AI's role in reinventing what's possible can help our port and our workforce lead us into the future. All of this help keeps America's port and the cargo moving efficiently, supporting and creating even new jobs, and building a vibrant future for the communities that we serve in and around Los Angeles, as well as the nation. Thank you for joining us today. I look forward to being with you all again back here in October.